This is Steve Shoney. I am the city manager for the city of Upper Arlington. I am here, as always, with my sidekick.
I'm Darren Shulman. I'm the city attorney. I am a proud sidekick.
We are 42 episodes in.
Wow. We made it 42 episodes?
And you have still not booked a single guest.
It got so bad that the guest I was working on moved out of Upper Arlington. Like, I sent the email and everything, and I was like, oh, they don't live here anymore. Great.
Yeah. 42 episodes, not a single guest.
It would almost seem inappropriate for me to get one before 50.
No, it wouldn't.
Like, maybe for the 50th extravaganza, I need to put like 20 guests.
No. I think it would be great if you booked a single guest. That would be nice.
I'm just glad I read 43rd in your guys' book. Right?
No, we wanted to make sure that we started off the new year with our third guest in the new year.
So you're not 43rd, you're third. Still not particularly high, but
with somebody who we've been trying to get on the podcast for a while, and he's been like, "Oh, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to do that. No." The Vice President of Council, Mr. Brian Close, is with us today. So, Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
So clearly, if you know that in the early episodes, I would tap the table. You've listened.
I have listened.
Okay.
Haven't listened in a little while. About halfway through my workout this morning, I remembered that I had this, and I thought I'd better go listen.
So
I listened to Brendan's, which was great.
All right.
I figured if Brendan could do it, I guess I could do it.
That's fair. Yeah.
But he did a great
actually,
job,
Brendan's
so now.
Brendan's not our boss anymore either. So
Yeah.
we
So we can
can be
be.
Yeah,
honest
let's talk
about
about Brendan.
It's a 45-minute Brendan hour. Yeah.
So we have. Speaking of Brendan, I thought Brendan gave the most boring possible answers to our pre-show questions, and you, my friend,
beat him.
topped it.
I mean,
it was.
I can give you more.
What?
I mean,
No, we're going to get more out of you.
We're going to pull it out of you whether you want to give it to us.
I mean,
or not.
they're very direct questions.
Yeah, it's like, well, they're not too hard. You
could have followed up.
What musicals? Well, I did follow up with someone.
Who'd you follow up with?
I'm not going to give.
Oh,
my
the look
sources
on
away.
Brian's face right now. He's like, wait a minute. What happened here?
There's a mole in my house somewhere?
Perhaps.
All right.
You know, this is what happens when you've been on council for 6 years and you get to know people's spouses and family members and things like that. And you two are the only two I've had to do this with, by the way, because I actually had to go to Kelly too when Brendan was on and be like, your husband's too boring. Give me some answers that actually make sense.
And she told you he is that boring.
Yeah, pretty much. She did tell me, well, we'll get into this later. I don't know what Darren is going to ask you for start bench cut.
I have a really weird one that I didn't want to tell Steve about because this will either be a great bit or it will fall on his face. So Steve knows nothing about this, Brian. This is my start bench cut.
How's our editing on the show?
Pretty good.
Our editing is outstanding.
I mean, this isn't going to be curse worthy. It might just fall flat. Like there's nothing insulting about this. So I looked up famous Closes.
Ooh.
Because Close is a name that sounds pretty common.
Yeah.
And I was like, there must be a lot of famous Closes.
This is not bad.
Well, we'll see if it works because I learned that you might be the fourth most famous Close in the world.
Yay! 43rd best podcaster, fourth best Close.
So here are the Closes. So one of them you get to start. That's your number one Close.
What can I guess?
Like,
there's one of them that I'm going to
There's one that's obvious.
Glenn Close.
Glenn Close. Yes, Glenn Close is one of your options.
I got to guess.
No, I'm going to give you. I'm going to give you three, and you
Glenn
pick.
was the only one that.
Glenn's the only one. I thought this was going to be a great bit until I realized that Glenn is. There's a reason why we're always saying Glenn Close. So then you get, one's going to be number one, one's going to be, okay, they're your bench, and then one, that Close is gone from the Close family tree. Glenn Close, there's an actor named Eric Randolph Close. Now I have to give you some details because he's not that famous. Eric Randolph Close is an American actor best known for his roles as FBI agent Martin Fitzgerald in the CBS mystery drama Without a Trace from 2002 to 2009, and as Teddy Conrad in the ABC musical drama Nashville. He also had a recurring role as Travis Tanner in the show Suits. So he had 3 shows. Eric Randolph Close.
I need to look him up because I did watch Suits for a little bit before Meghan Markle.
I watched a little bit of Nashville.
Started dating.
Yes, he is Teddy Conrad in Nashville. So he's, and then 3, you might actually like this one.
You really like Canada, don't you?
The third Close is actually Brian Close. Brian Close is an English first-class cricketer.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout his cricket career, which lasted from 1948 until the 1977 season, Close was the most charismatic and well-known cricketers. He scored almost 35,000 runs as a batsman, including 52 centuries, with the highest innings score of 198. He also took 1,168 wickets as a bowler, over 800 catches as a fielder, and 1 stumping as a stand-in wicketkeeper.
What's a stumping?
I hope it's not like a beatdown or something.
I just stumped you.
Yeah. So
Brian, I think you got close because I know 2 of them. I have no idea who Eric Randall Close
you know who
is.
Brian Close is?
Yes.
I mean,
only because if you Google Brian Close,
you get him.
so he's been nothing bad has happened in my life to warrant something coming up on Google. But if you did happen to Google me, you would have a hard time finding me because of Brian Close,
The cricketer.
the cricketer.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So he's got to be your number one. He's
my number one. Yeah, yeah.
Glenn Close is not
I mean,
down.
You're benching Glenn Close.
Yeah, but
She's an Oscar winner, isn't she?
101 Dalmatians, Cruella de Vil. I mean, she wasn't a nice person in that movie. And who doesn't like dogs? But because I don't know who Eric
Well,
is.
and you've got like 18 dogs now, right?
3 dogs.
Okay.
And can I talk about my latest dog? Because that's probably...
Yeah, you can talk
Sure.
about it later.
Yeah, so we have 2 little dogs, Cavapoo and a Cavapoochon. I call those Jory's dogs, my wife. And I've been asking for a big dog for as long as I can remember. That's what we had growing up. Kind of like a country dog. It'd be outside. It wasn't a... Well, here's how we got to that point. My daughter loves animals. So she'd always be over at Petland, and they have weasels, or not weasels, what are they called? What's the
Ferrets?
Ferrets. So she wanted a ferret so bad. And they smell. They're kind of like big rats, no offense. But
To all the weasels out there
all the
listening.
weasels and rats and she was pushing hard on this thing, and somehow it got my wife then into looking at little dogs again. I said no. She was looking at Chihuahuas. I said, it's
Doesn't
not
it
your
have
turn.
to have a poo at the end of it, like a Chihuahua poo to match?
Well, just wait.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So she was looking at Chihuahuas, and I said, listen, it's my turn. Like, you've had to, and we do have a dog limitation in Upper Arlington. And let me take a step back. My wife loves dogs. She actually bred our Cavapoo during COVID. In fact, core memory, when COVID was going on, we're all working from home. You have to do business at home. And so I'm on a call with one of my clients, and I hear this bleeding. I'm like, what is going on out there? So I walk out to the living room, and my Cavapoo is in labor.
Like while you're on a business
While I'm
call?
on a call. So we're going through like the COVID and how do you submit for triple P loan and all this. And I'm like, hang on. He's like, what's going on back there? I mean, it's a good client, good friend. So it wasn't. I was like, well, my dog's giving birth right now. It's not a big deal.
Nothing weird going on here.
So we hang up.
My
and there she
Cavapoo is
She
giving
gives-
birth.
She gives birth right in our living room.
So what? But on clause 13B.
Yeah, you are allowed to have pups. You just,
Yeah.
I think it's 4 because I've looked it up just to make sure.
I love how you did all the research. Like, we're breeding this dog. I want to make sure I don't violate the city
Right?
ordinances.
She only had 1, so it wouldn't have at that time anyway. So
Cool.
I'm clear under any reading of the rules.
I appreciate that as city attorney, Brian. Thank you.
Right. So back to how we got to that point. It's my turn. I want a Saint Bernard.
That's
So
like the opposite.
Yes. It's kind of like you have your small dog. I have my big dog, my big dog. And
So your average is going to, you've got 2
Right.
small dogs, 1 giant dog. Your average is that you have normal sized
a
dogs.
normal sized dog. So when I was in college, I volunteered at Habitat, or not Habitat. I did that after college for the Humane Society. And I took care of this Saint Bernard called Beethoven, which you guys might have seen.
Creatively
I
named.
mean, he was 200 pounds. Like when I had to bathe him, I bathed with him. It was that difficult. I mean, when you picked up his poop, you were doing some work. So I was wanted one. And so I was like, I want to get a St. Bernard. And so my wife, being the dog person, researches it all and like, well, they drool and they shed. And I was like, I don't care. We'll figure it out. Let's go. We got to a point where she found a breeder that bred St. Bernards with poodles. I was like,
Bernardapoo?
St. Bernadoodle.
Oh, Bernardapoo. Okay.
Because of
It's getting out of hand.
Yeah, sorry, this story's going on a little bit long.
No,
So
the
anyway,
naming.
I'm learning. Yeah,
is
the
getting
naming got out of
hand.
hand.
I just call it St.
St.
Bernard. mix.
Bernardapoo.
So his dad is Stater Poodle, 90 pounds. His mom's a St. Bernard, 150 pounds. He's a beautiful, beautiful dog. He's got the coloring, but he looks like a big mutt. I always call these like designer mutts because that's what they are,
Yeah.
right? And he's about 45 pounds right now, and he seems huge just because he has a lot of fur. But he's got all the colorings, not like the very distinct like a St. Bernard, but he's got the whites and the browns and the blacks, and he's kind of my pride and joy right now.
So do you like him better than the kids at this point?
No.
Okay, just checking.
The more important question is, are you going to get one of those barrels with hot chocolate
we had
in
one.
it?
Yeah. Now I will say this: he hugs me more than my kids do. I walk in and I call it like the petting wash. Like he'll walk up and I'll start petting him and he'll go between my legs and kind of come around again. I was like,
he's not full size though. He's like a baby.
No, he's still a puppy. He's only 6 months old.
Is he going to get as big as a normal St. Bernard?
We don't know.
The poodleish.
He's a mix.
He's 50 pounds and he's 6 months
6
old.
months old. Yeah. He was the runt too. So my buddy John Underman got the big alpha, and he's about 10 pounds bigger, and he's gonna be a beast.
You realize your dog already weighs more than my child currently does.
Yeah. And I guarantee his paws are bigger than his hand. I mean, his paws are. But so this morning we had a snow day in Upper Arlington today. So I opened the door to let him outside, and I started filming him because it's the first time he's seen snow. And I was like, "Hey, buddy, this is what you're meant to do. This is go back home. This is your
yeah." Now let's go find a
He had
mountain.
a great time.
Let's go rescue some climbers.
Yeah, let's go rescue somebody. So, don't know how we got to that story.
So
we can back through
that
it.
was
Cruella de Vil.
Cruella de Vil.
Yeah, how could you be mean to Teddy? You can't.
Who knew that like my ridiculous start bench cut would lead into an actually incisive story about
That
St.
was an
Bernards?
incisive story. That was much better than what I was gonna. Well, I had two other start bench cuts for Brian.
I mean, if mine's learns about dog, you can give him one. Maybe we'll learn about his past as
I
an
think
astronaut.
one of the things, you are a Browns fan, right?
I am a Browns fan. Yes.
So every Browns fan, because we're both Bengals fans.
Be nice.
Do you want to give him the start bench cut for?
Oh, the quarterback, the all-time quarterbacks. It was Johnny Manziel. Was it a couch?
Yeah. Number
we
one
going
overall.
worst?
No,
Like
no,
reverse?
you got a start bench cut.
Yeah.
Your number one overall quarterback picks.
Who's the third?
Couch, Manziel, Baker.
I like Baker.
Baker's been redeemed this year. The
Baker
question was
had-
a lot funnier before this year.
But even before, I mean, he was
He's a
again
decent
going
human being.
back to COVID. It was 2020. We were in a little rental house because we were redoing our house, and that's when the Browns made the playoffs. And there was nothing to do, right? Like it was a Browns game. We had like our huge TV from our basement of our house goes on the wall of this or on a stand on this tiny house. So it literally took up the whole room of our living room. That's all you could really do. So Sundays it was the Browns. You'd make a big thing of nachos. And so when they made the playoffs, I bought my youngest son a Nick Chubb jersey, which held. I got my wife and my daughter and my other son Baker Mayfield jerseys, which
did not hold as much.
no.
But he didn't do anything completely objectionable. To
No, he's a good guy. He was just kind of a normal
So
guy.
you're gonna start Baker.
Yeah, I'll start Baker easy. I find Manziel fascinating. I watched that documentary on him. I didn't like him as a Browns fan, as a quarterback. So I'd probably go, Tim Couch gave us a lot of hope when we drafted him, what he did at Kentucky. We thought with the Browns coming back and having him there, that's a tough. I'd probably go Tim Couch just because Johnny didn't do anything. I mean, he did for that season. He came in off the bench. That was a fun few games. So maybe I'd go Johnny bench, cut Tim Couch because he never did anything for us.
Yeah, that question was a lot funnier when Baker was disgraced and bopping around all the
He
league.
was- I mean-
not disgraced, but he was not good like for a couple teams last year. Now he's like,
I didn't agree
playoffs.
with letting him go. I mean, he's better than anything we had. Look at who we're comparing him to.
yeah.
Right?
Right.
I mean, if you said like Vinny Testaverde and Bernie Kosar, and it would have been a different.
Well, we could actually have given him that question with like 6 of the quarterbacks from this year you ran through. Like there's a
Right?
lot of people.
I mean, Joe Flacco, right? I mean, how do you?
I don't know how he did that, but
I mean, I don't know how anybody can be mad at what he did, even with that last game. But I mean, he's not much younger than we are.
no.
And I get out of bed with a sore back, and I'm not getting hit by 300-pound people, so I don't know. How.
and he's
He's a lot younger than me.
Yeah.
Maybe for you too.
Was he 39?
I think he's about
Somewhere there,
He might be
yeah.
39. I'll have to look it up during the break. We'll fact check that. So are you happy with the season, the Brown season?
Yeah, I mean, it was, when you're a Browns fan, you always hope for the best but expect the worst. And so the fact that they were able to do what they did with the people that they had. And so when you hear any other team, like a Bengals fan, and say, well, we lost Joe Burrow, like, we lost our entire offensive line, starting running back, starting quarterback, safeties were gone, corners were gone. Interior D-line were gone for a few games.
It's a great result given what happened. That kind of makes you wonder, like, what could have been if all those injuries did not happen. Like, wait a minute.
Well, it's the Browns. I mean, it probably would have been the same result.
Probably would have been worse, actually, if you had everybody there.
I mean, I always say, I mean, I tell my daughter, you need to marry a Browns fan because there's no more loyal person in the world than a Browns fan. It might get bad, but they'll always stick with you.
They'll stick with you
because you're not born, like, we, in our generation, you might see some Cowboys fans and 49ers fans, whoever was good in the 80s, 90s. But nobody ever chooses the Browns. You are like bequeathed the Browns. Like,
you don't like, I have my menu of potential teams.
Right? And the Browns are
Browns.
Maybe this year there could be some, but probably not set on Northeast Ohio. But if you're in my house, I say you can root for any team you want. But when the Browns are on, nobody else is on. You can choose who you want. So you have a choice. But you're only going to watch the Browns in this house.
Is the Browns your number one kind of fandom, or do you like other teams and other sports?
I mean, I'm a Cleveland sports fan.
All Cleveland sports.
I mean, Indians are up there with them. And when they're in the World Series against the Cubs, was at 17, I remember waking up my kids to say this might be the only Cleveland championship. I mean, the Cavs, they did what they did. They're not up there with the Browns and the Indians. Woke them all up and said, watch this, because this might be it. So I go to an Indians game once a year, normally early spring, to try to get into the mood of it. But I don't watch as many games as the Browns. I'm kind of more of, if they're doing well, I kind of jump on that bandwagon. Yeah.
Good.
So
Steve's twitching as a Cincinnati fan.
I know.
I see probably more Reds games than I do Indians games, just because the firm I'm with is out of Cincinnati, so we get tickets. And
which ballpark do you like better attending? Because Red Stadium's newer, but
yeah, I like going up to Cleveland just because that's my team.
I was trying to think of a start bench cut with football teams, but I could only think of 2 football teams.
Wow, that says a lot, man. Producer Maggie can name 2 football teams.
Is one of them Kansas City because of Taylor Swift?
No. Taylor hurt me the Bengals game because she was rooting for the Chiefs. No, I could only think of the Steelers and the Bengals. And then, I mean, that whole time that you guys were talking, I was trying to think of a third team, and I couldn't think of anything but the Ravens.
I mean, the Ravens is a team, so
I was trying to go more close to home, but...
So that's Maggie telling us to move on from football talk because...
No, that's me asking you to help me.
Maggie's like, I'm just going to mute everybody else talking about football.
That's just walking into Giant Eagle and you see those 3 teams being sold. And
Exactly.
That's the only reason why you know the Steelers and the Bengals and the Browns.
So we said at the outset that you are you've been a member of council for 6 years. Your day job is that you're an attorney.
Correct.
You've got a lovely wife, 3 kids. Pretty full docket outside of work. What made you want to do this crazy thing and run for city council and spend Monday nights
every Monday,
fair number of Thursday mornings and
right? That's a good question. So, my father was on city council in Dublin back when this was late 80s when it was a village. I mean, Dublin in those times and the time I grew up was a lot like Arlington is now. One school, smaller community, kind of everybody knows everybody. But in those days, he ran just like we all have to run. And then he ran for for Common Police Court in Franklin County. That was like maybe 91-ish. And then Court of Appeals, Franklin County, 10th District. So I think overall those were kind of in my impressionable years, right? Like late 80s, I would have been, 7, 8 years old through. Always, walked the parade routes and handing out candy when you used to be able to do that. Actually, I remember one time on the west side in a parade, I was handing out candy for my dad, and I went up to somebody and gave him candy. He was like, I know your papa. He put my dad in jail. And I ran back to the convertible, like super scared. I said, Dad, that guy, you put his dad in jail. And he said, Brian, that's just his way of telling you that he knows me. It's all fine. It's all good. That's how because my dad grew up on the west side. So I think just, that public service was always there. I did Habitat for Humanity after college, built houses for a year down in Durham, North Carolina. So I always knew that there was, knew that I had to give back in this life. I mean, we're all very privileged to be where we are and doing what we're doing. So there's kind of a component of volunteering and giving back. And so I had a lot of, I call them like smaller part-time things that I was doing to volunteer, but obviously nothing as big as City Council. And I think just kind of as that opportunity showed itself, I think it was a little bit earlier than maybe I would have liked, but I think as you learn in life, there's never a great time for anything. My kids were, 2017, 6 years ago. So I had a 9-year-old, 6-year-old, and 3-year-old. It wasn't, I don't think my wife was super happy with me when I made that decision. We had talked about it, but I guess I forgot to circle back and say,
"Hey, I'm thinking about doing this. All right, it's worth having a discussion."
We talked and we went pros and cons, and then I was like, and then I was like, I think I'm gonna. And I've loved it. I mean, I've enjoyed every part of being on council. It just is. It's a lot different than what I do in my day job, but at the same time, the same skills kind of apply, just in a little different way. And you're able to kind of be more in the role that you're supporting when you're an attorney. So I don't think there was an aha moment. There wasn't anything. I just think at some point in my head, I decided I think I want to do this, and then later on in life, and then I think the opportunity just kind of came up in 2017, where there, at the time, weren't a ton of candidates. Now, by the time I got in and the time everybody else got in, there were 8 candidates. So it was
8 candidates. Okay, this is before my time. That's a lot.
And so I didn't even decide until I think it was like August 1st, and we had a petition due to get on the ballot by like the 8th. I mean, it was fire hose. I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, and I had 0 time to get signatures, and then all of a sudden, the elections. And now, thankfully, back then there wasn't as much early voting, so you kind of had October, where I think you lose a lot of that now. You have to kind of do, the second time I ran 21, it was kind of after 4th of July. You're starting, maybe not getting things out, but you're at least putting the foundation together as to what you want to do. But like I said, I've enjoyed every minute of it. I mean, sometimes on Monday nights, you'd rather be home watching a football game, but I can't think of really any other time that I'd rather be doing anything else.
We never feel that way as we're sitting there.
I never know what scores of any of the games are.
No, we never. No.
But you can't thank me for not having council on the Tuesdays after a holiday.
Yes.
That was the one that always kind of hurt, was you just had a holiday and now it's Tuesday, and so you're already kind of lost a day of the work week. And so you're scrambling on Tuesday. And it's enough to remember it's trash day, or what day is the holiday for trash. Even though I'm in City Council, I had to look that up this week to figure out how that works. But, you're just off a day. Everything's off a day. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, we have council.
Council night.
Yeah. Heck.
So as you've gotten to the little bit that you've gotten to see inside the bowels of city government, as it were, what's the thing that has surprised you the most? Like when you have a vision of what it means to be on city council and be involved in local government, and then you get into it. What has surprised you the most?
I think just how long it takes things to get done. I don't know what I assumed, but we're a municipality of 30-some thousand people. There's 7 city council members. We have our direct report. I just I thought some things could get done, especially right when I got on council, be like, I have all these great ideas and we're going to do them all, and you get in, there were 7 of us. So trying to figure out that, right? Like there's 7 of us. We have a city manager, Ted Staten, who'd been here. So he's got his agenda as to what he wants to do. You got other council members who have been here. And how do I get what I want to get done? Or I have a great idea. How do I get this done?
Right.
So that was difficult at first. You realize, as you step on the carousel, I think the way that our the timing works, we're always kind of in a mid-year of the budget, the second year of a 2-year budget. And so any idea you have that costs money is like, well, great, bring it up
during budget
next year. You're like, all right, so that's
bring it up in September so we can get it on the agenda in November, and then we can maybe start working on it next July.
Yeah. And then before then you got to get 4 other people or 3 other people to think it's a good idea and run with it. So that's taking it. But at the same time, I also realized in a community like up Arlington that taking our time on things is important because change is hard. And if things were done fast, I think our community would have a hard time, especially if it's anything more than just kind of straightening the line a little bit. So I've realized over the years that frustration has kind of come into, well, this is kind of how it's supposed to work, right? Show the people the work, show them what we're doing, make sure you have the people behind what you're doing, or at least explain it enough that they can understand why you're doing it. And I think that's why we've had a lot of the success that we've had in the 6 years that I've been here is we've either, taken our time and aired it out, make sure everybody understands what's going on, be able to voice their concerns. And those concerns, I think that we've seen have often led to a better work product in the day because different perspectives provide a different thought angle on the issue that we're trying to resolve. And I think just understanding that process and how that works has been what makes us successful.
With that experience, and I know we had Brendan on, this is the third name check of Brendan's episode, who was obviously council president at the time, but how is being council vice president different?
Yeah, we got to get better at name checking our current council members.
Yeah, well, exactly. Brendan can't do anything for us anymore. How is being vice president or being in leadership different than, what you talked about? You started and you're just a new person and you're just trying to learn your way.
I think you're a little bit more plugged into some of the issues. I think you have an opportunity to, having a set meeting to sit and talk about some of those, whereas if you're not on leadership, you have to take the initiative to, sit down and have a meeting and be able to discuss some of those things. It kind of gives you insight as to the bigger picture. I think we've done a good job, in the last 6 years, we create this timeline. So at least it shows, all of council kind of what's coming and kind of how things are going to work. And I think that's always important because we got to look ahead and make sure, that we don't have agendas for certain meetings too full and not, other times. But I've enjoyed it just for that, to be able to sit down with, the president and leadership of the administration and just kind of talk through some of those things. And I think that's where you kind of understand. I think we all read them on a piece of paper and everything always looks fine. But then when you start discussing them, I think you come to realize that some of these might be bigger issues that we need to have a plan for, as opposed to just putting them through the agenda and voting and going through them. So
we don't have wards here, so like anyone can pretty much call any council member. Do you get more calls now that you're, vice president? I'm going to call Brian because he's got that title, or you kind of get the same number of calls from people that you've always got?
I don't think I get any more of that. I mean, I think I initiate more of those conversations, just to make sure that people know what's going on and to make sure we're kind of on the right track on some. So if we have something coming up and I'm standing at a basketball game, I'll ask somebody, I was like, hey, we're looking at this. What do you think? And just kind of get an off the cuff response. But no, I don't get any more or less. I mean, the funny thing is nobody knows I'm on city council by and large. I mean, It's not like I go into Giant Eagle and people are
swarming you with autograph requests.
It's not like you with your podcast and people are coming up to you and saying, oh, you're from the podcast. I mean, I had one time, 6 years, right after an election. And remember, during an election, your main strategy is to pump your photo into people's mailboxes as much as you can afford.
You've been recognized one time.
One time. They're like, wait, didn't you?
So people don't just stop you everywhere you are?
I mean, then people who know who I am.
But no one's like, oh, that's Councilman.
Nobody who doesn't know me doesn't. Maybe they do. But it's not a rock star status. It's kind of, I call it like a super volunteer role in the community of like, I need to step in. It's my time. I'm thoughtful and deliberate about things that I do. And this is a role that I feel like I do well at. And maybe it goes unappreciated until, something goes wrong and then you get blamed. But
now, I almost didn't recognize you this morning, because you've been on leadership for 2 years and you have a certain sartorial signature, which is you wear a lot of quarter zip sweaters. So when you sent the, which I actually have one on today. Thank you.
Steve also wears a lot of quarter zip sweaters.
I do, because I want to be more like.
Do they make half zip sweaters?
No, I mean,
if you're short, maybe.
Weird.
If you're short,
one went down, you're like, no, that's yuck. So I did ask my inside source how many quarter zip sweaters you have.
Ooh.
Do you know the answer to that question?
3 shelves full?
11.
11 shelves full? Or
no, 11 quarter zip sweaters.
That's enough for like 3 weeks worth of work.
I even got some details on the preponderance of the color.
Okay.
What is the most frequent color?
Blue.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah, at least half of them are blue is what my
different shades of blue.
Yeah.
Can't get the same blue.
Yeah. That would be weird if you just always wore the same. Yeah. See, I find it interesting that your fashion noticing was the sweater, because I'm always
I
impressed
asked about
by
the other one too.
I'm always impressed by your shoes.
Oh yeah.
Like, and I don't check it every time, but every time I notice your shoes, they're A, different, and B, awesome. Are you a sneakerhead?
No, but
do you feel you have some sneakerhead tendencies?
Well, yeah. I mean, you go through. I don't know. It's just like you get to a point and you're like, I'm kind of sick of these sneakers. I'm gonna get some other one. And
do you have a brand that you usually gravitate towards?
I mean, I wear these Nike Air Maxes.
That's kind of what you get.
Yeah.
So according to my inside source, all of his sneakers, like there are shockingly only 4 pairs that have never touched grass. So that was my question, because they're always really clean. I mean,
they're like popping.
Yeah. So
I don't know.
There's 4 pairs of Nike Air Maxes that
I've never touched grass.
Never touched.
Those are my work Air Maxes, and then I have different shoes for different situations.
But they're all Air Maxes, but they're different. They're specialty uses.
Or some of them are, those used to be my work ones and they've worn out, and so now those are my coach football in Air Maxes, right? So you don't want to wear your nice clean ones to coach football,
right?
Or they're not work shoes anymore.
So
I mean, there's
like a method to this.
Even though I'm wearing sneakers to work, you still have to have a standard, right? I'm wearing nice, clean
sneakers.
Shoes. They're not.
So as a corporate lawyer, because you do basically corporate transactional law, is that
correct?
Right?
Yeah.
When did this shift go from where you would have had 11 suits in your closet, to, and as I'm assuming that as an associate, you would have gotten fired if you showed up in tennis shoes.
I mean, I think COVID's changed a lot of that.
Yeah.
Period. I'd probably say when you're a partner in a law firm, it's like your own small business.
Yeah.
So you're your own boss. I mean, unlike here where there's a hierarchy, right? Counsel and 3 of you, and then on the way down. There's our office, there's almost 100 people, maybe 50 of them are partners. I don't know. So there's 50 bosses. Who's the boss? Nobody's the boss. Everybody's your own boss. So who's to tell me the way I dress for my clients and how I do things is wrong when that's kind of appropriate. I remember one time I took a buddy of mine and we went out to meet a client, and we wore full suits. This was probably mid-2010s. And we walk into them, and they were one of those places that had a ping pong table, and it was like you couldn't have dressed worse for the situation, And it's like you got to read your clients and know kind of what they expect, and you got to look respectable enough. But because I'm transactional, I'm not in front of people a lot. I'm mostly behind a screen, drafting, sending emails, on the phone call. Now WebEx and Teams and all that changed a little bit of it, but you'd be amazed how good a quarter zip looks on.
I know.
Yeah. I can't tell you how happy
It
I
blue
was.
in particular.
Yeah,
I need to remember that.
This is going to sound kind of make me even older than I am, but like when Skechers came out, because they were tennis shoes, but they weren't white.
Yeah.
They were like black tennis shoes. I was wearing those to work because like they look kind of like work shoes.
I think you're still wearing that same pair of Skechers.
I'm wearing that same pair of Skechers to work right now, but you're rocking like legit nice looking.
And the funny thing is I do, maybe not as many, but I have a lot of leather shoes that I used, and I can't tell you the last time, not even to a wedding, not even to my swearing in.
I was going to say, if you're swearing in, you were.
But I had the same thing. It was like, you have your British tan leather shoes, you have your, all the, but I'm not a black guy. I don't like.
You don't like the black
I don't
shoes?
wear black. I don't even think I have a black suit.
Really?
I might have a coat. And so I never wore black shoes or I don't have a black quarter zip. I don't know what it is. It just never. I'm more of a positive.
I think we know what his going away gift will be when he gets.
I'm a positive, optimistic guy, and black is not that. So I think it's reflective, maybe of.
Steve is wearing black too.
I was going to say, if you want to see what it looks like, this one's an extra large tall, but it'll be a little bit. It's a little big on me, but it'll be a little bit big on you. But yeah.
Most council members, when they leave council, get like a picture or a flag or something. Brian's going to get the black quarter zip.
I did like the one you had on yesterday.
Yeah, we need to remember that in 2 years when he's off. It will happen. We are getting you a City of UA quarter zip.
But don't make it black or I won't wear it.
No,
you refuse.
No, I don't refuse. It just
we'll find a blue or a gray one. Yeah. We can.
We have to go get all the shades of blue he already has. I had on yesterday. We got to find the one shade he does not have, periwinkle or something. Yeah. He doesn't have.
Nah, I think I got one.
All right, what else you got?
I was going to ask you. I think Steve touched on this, but one of the reasons we like having particularly council members, but also employees on, is so people get to know them as people, as opposed to. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do? You said transactional and stuff like that, but people think lawyers are lawyers, and we're both lawyers. We do completely different stuff.
Yeah. So I call myself outside general counsel to closely held businesses. What that means is I represent a lot of businesses. Closely held people don't understand what that means. I'm not representing public companies. A lot of mid-market companies, family-owned businesses, businesses that don't have, hundreds of shareholders. And I don't, how all that starts. It's all relationships. It's all kind of referrals. So I actually have my master's in taxation. I got that right after law school. I actually worked on it when I was in law school. And after law school, I worked for Judge Bryant, the 10th District Court of Appeals, who was a big influence in my life. Great lady. And I finished my master's while I was working because you only worked 8 to 5, and when you're in law school, you're working, 6 to 10 every day. So it wasn't terribly difficult to finish. I break that stigma of I'm a lawyer that actually likes numbers.
I was going to say I'm kind of like blown away by this.
I was an econ major in college. I've always liked numbers, always liked math, and I thought tax was interesting. And I kind of saw in law school that people were adverse.
There's a market there for you if you can do it.
Yeah, I was like, this is great. This is easy. It makes sense. It's kind of like math to me is like a mindset. I'm sorry, tax is like a mindset. And once you kind of get into it and you understand how things should work, now you just have to kind of back it up in terms of that. So I started doing tax when I came out. I actually got hired kind of to do kind of corporate work, and that was actually the only way I got that job. I came out and there wasn't a ton of jobs available, but I had the LLM, even though I worked for a judge, which is litigation, and I was able to get a corporate job because of that. And it was with a firm called Buckingham, Doolittle and Burrow, who merged into Dinsmore within 9 months of me being there, and that's kind of a whole nother story. But so I started working for an attorney that did a lot of kind of family-owned business work, and he would just kind of hand it to me. He wasn't a transactional guy, so I started doing all that. And you meet people and you do good work, and things start coming, and it kind of evolved. And you pick up a client, and it's always a funny. Somebody asked me the other day. So I'm going out to Scottsdale in 3 weeks to go to the waste management, and I go out every year because one of my good
waste management golf tournament.
Yeah, Phoenix Open.
He just likes to look at garbage.
Yeah.
Sorry. So one of my bigger clients is a portfolio of golf companies. And you're like, well, how did you get that client? It was like, well, it was a friend that I had from high school that started this one company. And then when he left, somebody else was in, and then they sold to a bigger company that was buying up these operating companies. And, I did good work. And the guy on the other side was, they have this big New York firm that charges $1,000 an hour. And to get the time, you're charging like $400 an hour. And you're like, would you mind doing all of our work for us for all these, so it's like, I got there through a friend who's no longer with the company, and then the company sold, and then so it kind of evolved. I mean, I'd probably say 60, 70% M&A type transactions. And again, that too even kind of evolved as a specialty. I do kind of not-for-profit acquisitions. So I do.
What is a not-for-profit?
You work for a not-for-profit. So I do like student housing acquisitions.
Okay.
One of my good buddies has a not-for-profit that he has kind of the two companies, which is advising universities, and then the not-for-profit, which kind of comes in and takes an asset off the balance sheet of a university, then affiliates with the university, just to kind of, it's a balance sheet play, and the not-for-profit kind of runs it and works in conjunction with the university to be able to run that student housing. So you're doing acquisitions. So
if my kid's going to a school where you're doing work, can you get them like further up on the list
to get into
that housing?
Right
so
now,
we'll talk offline.
Oh, you actually had some good case law when you're looking at property tax exemptions in Ohio, because that's the whole thing, right? It's if somebody's selling a and I in the senior housing space as well, where there's a lot of not-for-profits. But if you have a not-for-profit going for senior living, where there are both for-profit and not-for-profit, same with student housing, they're able to oftentimes get it because of you can get property tax exemptions tied to it, so your pro forma looks a little bit better when you take out a big chunk of. So I think through my tax background and working on some of those things, I just kind of evolved into that.
This is a naive question. There's enough of those nonprofit mergers and acquisitions to kind of keep somebody working.
But it's not all I do, right?
Yeah.
I represent I'm kind of industry agnostic, but in the nonprofit space, I do the property tax exempt work. I understand public finance and bond work.
So you're doing more than just the M&A. You're doing lots of stuff.
I kind of quarterback it. So
Gotcha.
then I bring in other attorneys depending on what it is. If it's like a new construction, I'll bring in a development attorney. So I bring in other experts through me, but I know enough of all of it to be able to run with it. And a lot of it I can answer, but if it's something that, let's say you got a 100-page ground lease, I'm going to go through it, but I'm going to have somebody else and I'm going to kind of help the client. Because, oftentimes when your value as an attorney is understanding the client and their business. Yeah. And so, you have somebody else. I just had a call the other day. It's like somebody else looked at the work. All right, you lead the call, and I'm sitting on the call. And I know more about the client than the person who did the work. And so I'm almost answering on behalf of the client what we're going to do because I know the business so well. And I've done enough deals with them that I know what's important and what's not important kind of to that particular business. So, it's I represent concrete manufacturing company. They do, anywhere between 3 and 6 acquisitions a year between West Virginia. Again, these are like smaller, I say mid-market, but it goes low market. We might purchase a concrete facility in West Virginia for $600,000.
Okay.
So, and you learn in each little industry what's important in the concrete business is different than what's important in student housing versus what's important in senior housing.
The fascinating thing about talking to other lawyers like Brian is we're both lawyers, so everyone assumes we know everything, but I literally don't know anything that he does. I could not, I could read a contract, but I could not do any of that stuff. And it's just fascinating because people are like, oh, lawyers, you go to court and you argue on Law and Order or something.
I've never been in a court. The closest I get is I used to do 119 hearings for property tax, like BOR, BTA, which was, I enjoyed those because there's no real rule of evidence or no real, so without being a litigator, if you're my client, I was trying to get something, I'm going to drag you to the answer. And the school board started saying objection. I'm like, I don't know how to do this unless he's not giving me the answer I want. So I got to get him there.
So will you just say this, please?
But no litigation. I don't.
It is interesting because we now have 5 out of 7 council members are lawyers. Up until January, it was 6 out of 7. And everybody's like, oh, wow, that's it. And it is a lot of lawyers. But it is fascinating to watch how each of you approaches a problem based on the kind of law that you do. Mm-hmm. So I'll use John.
You can name check some people now.
Yeah, I do get to name check some people. So John Kulowitz is a courtroom appellate attorney, has argued stuff in front of the Supreme Court and been on the podcast.
And talked about it.
And talked about it.
Go back and listen to that episode.
Yeah, exactly. That's episode, I don't know what episode it is. Anyway, we've had John on the pod, and John is like an information hoarder. He has to know everything, and he has to know the answer to every question because he's an appellate attorney. Yukemi Wakasine-Jeter is a little bit more similar to you, but more on the kind of IT, technology, patents kind of side. So she'll dive into the technical a lot more. Kathy's a contracts attorney, a construction contracts attorney, so she's into kind of what are the purchasing rules and what's all that stuff. And so it's yes, you guys are all attorneys, but you all approach it from the kind of law that you do, which, I always describe, I say to people, look, yes, city council is an elected body, they're a deliberative body, but more importantly, they're our board of directors. And having a board of directors that has different skill sets and different approaches is fundamental to having any enterprise work well. And I think that's part of what works well with you guys. We are getting up there in time, so I'm going to bring us back to the 2 questions we always ask every guest at the end of our podcast, which is, What do you love about UA? What would you change?
What I love about UA that I mentioned earlier is, and you see a lot of it. It's been in the news recently with some of the levies that are passing, where one thing has got to build another high school, another middle school, and 3. We have one high school. It's one community. It's the same. And again, that's where in a community I grew up. But that's the way it used to be. That's important because it feels unified as a community. There's no, UA High School 1 and UA High School 2 where it kind of divides the community. I think just the walkability and the friendliness. I mean, I always say our sidewalks are used to get someplace, whereas if you go to some of these outlying suburbs, you use the bike paths just to go for a run or bike ride. Like if I get on my bike, I'm going to Moretti's, right? Or I'm walking to the gym. It's just very connected. I mean, my original story was when I lived up in, or my wife still lived up in Dublin. I think I was in Clintonville at the time, but we took a cab from downtown pre-Uber back to her house. It was like $60. I'm like, there's no way I'm living out here. And I was like, I got to live as close to, downtown, the community as I can. And I knew a lot of guys from Upper Arlington, both from college and from law school. And, kind of once you're in it, I kind of backdoored into a house it was literally one off of the park. And it was the greatest thing ever. Yeah. I mean, for our kids, for just, people are walking around Northern Park all the time. And then when the opportunity arose, when my neighbor sold his house, I was able to actually move kind of right on the park. And it's,
So were you in the house behind you guys?
I was.
So you moved one house over?
One house over. When we moved, I actually took a panel of the fence off. And it was like ants on a picnic. Like the movers pulled up this big truck. I'm like, what are you going to do with that?
He's going to walk back.
You're going to go farther than if you just cut through the back of the. So when we redid our house, we put on a big front porch, which kind of allows me to, you're social without necessarily being social. And that's the best thing. I mean, there's people everywhere. There's games going on. My favorite part is, when I get home from work, I can get on the bike and ride over to football practice, right? That's cool. Our kids do things at St. Agatha where it's just like, go. I don't even have to drive you. Go across the street.
I got this very vivid image of the scene in Austin Powers where he's trying to turn around the go-kart in the hallway.
So it's that, and the people are all kind of vested in similar thinkers and what they're trying to do, and it's a fantastic community. I've loved every minute. I think I told my parents the other day, I was like, I never moved back to Dublin. I don't know why anybody would want to go.
Yeah.
Take that, podcast studio.
But what would I change? I mean, I don't even know what I wrote down when I sent you an email back. Maybe I didn't. But I think, can you remind me what I said there?
There's only one wrong answer.
I just have the response from my secret source.
I can't think of, necessarily what I'd change. I mean, I always thought at first until I gave the answer earlier, which was how long it kind of takes things to get done and how change is hard in the community in spite of.
And this is the one where you're actually allowed to be. I didn't say the ground rule at the beginning of this that I usually do with council members. You can't talk about anything policy related until you get to this question. Okay. So you're free to talk policy if you want.
No, I mean, just, there's certain things you'd like to do faster. And it's like, God, I've been on council for 6 years. I mean, when you look back, you're actually like, oh, wow, we did a lot of economic development that has brought a lot of revenue into the city. So we're able to do a lot of things that we couldn't do when I first started. But, there's also things that you kind of wish that you could get done faster. But that's more on me as a city councilman, me as a resident. Obviously I'd like to have more field space for the kids to be able to go out and play. But that's really it. I don't have too much to.
We made it through another bullet dodge without replacing the city manager and the city attorney. Right? So that's a good answer. There's no wrong answer except for that one.
All right. Well, we're going to let you go. We're going to let you hop back into that great big giant GMC truck, which I did. One other story I need you to. One other question I need to ask. I mean, you live in Arlington, you work downtown, you're a lawyer. It's not like you're, you got the truck before you got the cow-sized dog, but otherwise you're not like hauling livestock.
Correct.
Why do you need this massive truck?
I mean, I had a Cherokee after I had a Wrangler growing up. Cherokee, totaled it on Lane Avenue. It was my fault, actually. And I didn't know, I'm not a car guy, but I realized out of that process that maybe I don't know which car I want. I know which cars I don't want. And then I think I wanted a Wrangler. And my wife was like, okay, well, it's got to be 4 doors. I don't want a 4-door Wrangler. Who wants a 4-door Wrangler? I want a 2-door.
Seems to
take
defeat
the top
the purpose
off.
of it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just kind of, trucks, once you get in, if you ever got in that thing, I mean, the inside is not a truck. It's not like the trucks we drove when we were working on a farm. It's nice. And it's convenient to have kind of that capability. So the first time I got it, I test drove it and I took it right downtown. Mm-hmm. And I said, if I can't parallel park this thing in the short north, I'm not going to. They've got cameras on all those things now. It's so easy to just, whip it right in. I'll say this, I will not drive anything else but a truck from this point out.
All right. It's just checking. It's just one of those little weird, odd things.
Yeah.
It was that obsession and the quarter zip obsession that I had to understand a little bit better coming out of today. So
and there you go.
I got my shoe answered, so I think
then you got your shoe.
We got all the Brian quirks.
Did you have any Brian quirks that you've observed that you wanted to get answered?
Do you have any Adidas Sambas? Those
No.
are like the elite. Okay.
Those were, I was a 80s soccer kid.
Yeah.
Right. So I had the shag in the back. And
Oh,
the Umbros.
You had the Umbros,
Yeah.
yes.
And
What happened to
and the
Umbro, by
Adidas
the way?
I don't know.
They were so cool.
I need to get a soccer
Yeah.
hair picture of you.
Oh, the Gatorade gum, that was the.
Sambas are
So one of the underrated things about one of the underrated kinds of pictures from the 80s is guys who played soccer in the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody focuses on like the claw hair on girls from that age. But man, some of the soccer hair was pretty atrocious.
Oh, yeah.
Did you ever etch like lightning bolts in the side?
No,
You didn't
my
do that?
parents weren't big on haircuts. I mean, I'd go from it'd be like once every 3 months. So it'd be like real short, and then it would be like this big. I was like 2 different people. It's like, well, haircuts are expensive, so
It's not free.
Yeah.
right. So I think if you would have etched a lightning, I don't know what it would have looked like
Yeah.
after 3 months.
If I had known this, I would have asked my source for
We're still waiting on your beret picture.
my what picture?
Your beret.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Was that in Toronto? You had a,
Yeah.
you're like, hey, wee.
No, in high school I played the tuba and the sousaphone. So for marching band,
Yes.
when I was wearing the sousaphone, they had our marching band used to wear the kind of Q-tip
Yeah.
hats, and so as a sousaphone player, I had to have a beret.
And MC Hammer pants, so you can.
I definitely had MC Hammer pants.
Yeah, the
That's-
Zubas.
Yeah,
That's
the
what-
Zubas is there. Yes.
That's the one bad thing about being a Browns fan is like, when the Zubas were huge,
Oh,
I'm a
don't
Browns
tell-
fan. I'm like, they're brown and
They're
orange.
brown and
Don't
orange.
tell
Right,
me you have Browns.
I did.
Zubas.
Yeah.
Those are,
Heck
we
yeah.
need to bring Zubas back. Those are
Zubas,
cool.
and if you don't wear Zubas, you're pegging your jeans and you're just loving
Oh.
getting the hypercolor shirt on. No,
That's another thing that needs to come back. Do you think those cause cancer or something? Because why don't they make them anymore?
not that great.
The day
I don't
glow
know.
stuff?
You put your hand on it, it changed color.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
That was the coolest thing when I was in high school.
I think if I wore one of those now when I outside in the summer, it'd be like dark here and
Yeah, they'd be like,
oh, are you hot, Brian? Be like, oh,
armpits.
this is not a good look.
Yeah, it probably has negative repercussions.
Yeah.
Thanks for this memory trip down the wardrobe of my past
Yeah, I mean, as
or future.
Yeah, or present sometimes with what I've seen you wear around the office, but that's another story.
members only.
All right. Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for everything you do for the community.
Thank you. Who's your favorite Ninja Turtle?
Donatello.
Is it?
He's the
That
nerdy
makes
one.
sense. Yeah, I was gonna say. Go.
I also love in the cartoon because like Leo had a sword, but he couldn't like stab anybody, so he was always doing creative stuff like I'll throw the sword and hit this rope, and the rope will hit him or something.
Sorry, I won't bring up Ninja Turtles again.
Yeah.
I forgot about this. Then I discovered he's kind of a closet female pop artist.
It's more like breakup music.
His favorite song in his 20s was Kelly Clarkson's Breakaway song. He also loved Celine Dion.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Create a playlist of the songs that you would want to be played in the movie of your
About
life.
you. Oof.
Wake up in the morning
No, that's
feeling
not the
like
catchy
P.
one.
Diddy.
Hey, Mr. Postman.